Okay, so the next option on the menu system is pictures. So right next to videos. Now when I click on pictures, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here, and what you're going to see in the corner is essentially a folder sorted by name, and it's just simply showing me that I have 18,031 pictures. Now the frustrating part here, of course, is that the rest of the Zune user interface is all completely blank. It's not showing me, I would think, a very usable view of my pictures. Now I can sort by name and sort by date taken, but it's still showing me the top level photos. Now, like any, I would say, average, Windows Vista or even Windows XP user, all my pictures are simply down in my pictures folder. So why the Zune software doesn't show me one level down from here, I'm kind of baffled. So if I zoom out a little bit here, you can actually see these are all of my actual picture folders. Now this would be, I would say, a much more usable view of my pictures, because this allows me to see my pictures by folder. Now if I click on sort by date, you'll see them shuffle around, but they're still sorted based on a folder view. So again, this is something that I don't find very useful. Something like Picasa or Windows Photo Gallery shows me all of my pictures in a flattened folder view, but that's also sorted by date. So up at the top I have my most recent pictures. This view really doesn't show me much of anything, to be honest. I would say that's kind of useless. Now this is album art that I've scanned, as you can see as I scroll through. Windows Vista, and the Zune software generates the images quite quickly, almost faster than I can scroll. So performance-wise, it's pretty good here. If I double click on an image, it will show it to me full screen with a nice fade. I think that's pretty classy, and I like the way that looks. Down in the lower right hand corner here, you can see that there's actually some slideshow options. So I can click next or previous to switch to different options. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit here so you can see that as I'm clicking on next and previous, you can actually see a nice crossfade. So definitely dig that. It's a really, really nice slideshow mode. But of course, what's kind of curious is down at the bottom here, we still have the Windows Vista toolbar. I would say that a good slideshow would hide the toolbar and actually truly go into full screen mode. In fact, several times as I was using the Zune software, I was wondering why it didn't allow me to go into a full screen mode, because I think the software is so gorgeous, it kind of cries out to be the only interface that you're using. At any rate, I can click on the play button and this will actually start up a slideshow. And I believe somewhere in the options there's an option that allows you to specify how many seconds there is between images. So this just goes through the images. Again, nothing particularly fancy, but I would say it's a nice approach. Now it's kind of bizarre though, is that down here you can see it's still showing me my clip from The Office. It's showing me the timeline picker, and this is dropped over my pictures. Now of course I don't see any logical reason for doing that, and even though I've waited a few seconds, I don't see it disappearing. So that's a little bit curious, although it might disappear after all. So that's kind of it for pictures. I would say again that the Zune team really needs to work on making pictures more usable, because of course what I would want would be to see a timeline view. Like for example, if I go in here to vacations and then I sort by date taken, I can actually see something that's usable. I can see that my most recent vacation was to Ontario, and then it was Hawaii in 2006. So that's useful. That would be helpful to have at the topmost level, because right now what the Zune software forces you to do is to kind of dig through your folders and pick out the pictures that you actually want, which I don't think is as usable. Now that may change if I manage to find some improved auto synchronization, which hopefully once I connect my Zune I will find. Now the last option we're going to look at is podcasts. That's coming up next. Okay, so the final menu option is podcasts. Now I was over at pictures, so let me just click over to podcasts, and it says you have no podcasts in your collection. Now you have a couple options. You can add a known favorite, and what that brings up is actually a subscribe window where you can enter in, I would assume, the RSS feed or the podcast XML URL, and I would assume that it would subscribe it to you. Now I'm not a podcast user really at all, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to feign ignorance as to some of how this feature will work, but I'm going to click cancel, and then I'm going to go up to find podcasts in the Zune Marketplace. Now the Zune Marketplace is loading. You can actually see it's kind of faint, but there's a little Zune icon that has some sparkly effects, and that's essentially the waiting icon. I've never seen a cooler waiting icon, so kudos to Microsoft for making that much nicer looking. Now I'm downloading some stuff in the background, so this may be a bit longer than we're sort of used to waiting. Now everything is starting to appear. So this is the podcast's marketplace directory. So we might as well dive into the marketplace and see what it has to offer. Now there's a few things in this directory. I think it's really nicely designed. It's really attractive to look at and easy to understand. So these are some of the featured podcasts, and then you can also see that there are video podcasts. So if I were to click on this, it shows me an interface that, again, ideally, if everything was working really quickly, this would come up a lot quicker. I'm not sure if it's the Zune server or my own internet connection. This is the NBC Nightly News podcast. It shows me an icon with the album art for the podcast, as it were. I have a couple of options here. I'll zoom in and show you. I can subscribe to it. I can report a concern. Reporting a concern actually brings up this thing that gives me some options for reporting podcasts that have offensive content or is misrepresented. Interestingly enough, there's even an option here to say that a podcast is stale. So I guess that means that Microsoft really wants to have active podcasters in their directory, which I think is actually a pretty cool concept. Now, if I want to, I can click on download, and when I click on that, it's actually going to prompt me to sign in. I'm going to cancel out of that because, of course, I don't want to sign in just yet, but that's looking like how the podcasting directory is looking. I'm just waiting for it to back out here again. Again, the performance issues will hopefully be improved on my own end and also, of course, on Microsoft's server. Over on the left-hand side here, we have podcasting different categories, right? So I can click on international, and it will bring up a list of international podcasts, assuming I am a little bit patient. So over on the left-hand side here, there's North America, South America, Africa, Asia, etc. So it gives you detailed locations. And then the first one is Amnesty International, France, So I'm assuming here if I click on North American podcasts, it will do a filter. And in fact, the Zune waiting icon comes up. So it's doing an active filtration of the podcasts. And it's still thinking. But as you can see, it's continuing to download album art in the background. So that's actually pretty cool. So I'm a bit impatient, so I'm just going to back out of that.